The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We are coming at you on February 13th, 2023. In this show, we're going to focus a little bit on the state of Pennsylvania because we have a special guest with us today, Tim McMaster, who is the Township Auditor of Caughnawaga Township of Pennsylvania. This is a great opportunity to dig in on some of what's going on around there. So let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Tim McMaster joining us. And maybe we could bring up our visual, James, for him. He is currently, as I mentioned, the Caughnawaga Township Auditor, and he is running for supervisor. So, making great strides. And by the way, we just interviewed him on another show where if you want to find out more about him, go check that show out. And it's a great interview where you can dig in on what's going on with Tim and his push for liberty there. Anyways, let's jump into the state of Pennsylvania. Real quick, I'll bring up the Cato map. This is for any of you in the audience not sure where it is. Here is Pennsylvania. They're actually rank about 14th on Cato's chart for liberty. So they're doing pretty well there. It is a pretty well split state in terms of there's a lot of Republicans and a lot of Democrats getting elected there. And as Tim told us in the last episode, at the local level, there's actually quite a few libertarians getting elected as well. And at the national level, it's, the Senate is Democrats and the House is kind of split there as well. So that's kind of what it looks like on the ground. So let's jump into some of the stories we wanted to cover on this particular one. And they just had an election and they elected a new governor. And so the new governor's a Democrat, but he's actually pushing some kind of at least a few ideas on liberty. I don't know a whole lot about him, but this sounds actually like a pretty good thing. He's trying to de-credentialize some of this stuff. This whole push we've had for everybody go to college, everybody get a degree, and the government's going to throw all this money at it. And then we wind up having all these people spending all these resources for education that probably doesn't make a hill of beans difference in the job they're doing, and probably locks a lot of good people out of these jobs as well. And this is what this governor has pointed out. He says, look, there's so many jobs there that he doesn't think need a college degree. And so I believe in the numbers they talked about in the article, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of
I think 65,000 jobs,
65,000, yeah. And so it's a significant portion. It's like around 90% of the jobs in state government that he wants to make where you don't need these credentials. So what do you guys think about that? You guys want to jump in on this one?
Well, we'll let our guests go first. Tim, so what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, the blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Shapiro he's not pro-liberty. I just want to dispel that myth outright. This is a good program, and I actually, definitely support this. I think there are far too many jobs that require either a 4-year degree or like a master's degree or even like some kind of occupational licensing. So eliminating that requirement, I think, is great for the people of Pennsylvania. That said, Josh Shapiro was one of the guys that tried to kick the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania off the ballot a couple of cycles ago. So he is it's going to take a lot more than that for him to get back in my good graces. I'll just leave it at that.
So if he's not pro liberty, why is he doing this? I mean, what is this something to help the unions or something?
Yeah, I think it's a ploy to help the unions, but at the same time, it's also hard to fill those jobs, honestly, because a lot of the people in Pennsylvania who do meet that requirement, who do have the 4-year degree and the skill set to perform these jobs, they'd much rather take their chances in the open market, go to the private sector. So it's really self-preservation, in my opinion. It's, this is a way for the government to say, hey, come join us, be one of us. And honestly, the benefits packages that they offer, it's worth taking a pay cut to leave the private sector to go work for these people if you want to be a blood-sucking sponge.
Well, tell us how you feel, please. Tell us how you feel.
Yeah. It's funny, because here in California, I mean, especially in Sacramento, where a few of us are at least connected to, it's like that's where most of the jobs are, because it's grown so much, and it's like if you're looking for a job out of college, it's fair amount you're going to get somehow sucked into one of these levels of government here in California.
I think we have about 200 and almost 225,000 people working for the state government here in California. The only thing that I think that is correct, isn't it, Jason? Isn't that correct? I think it's somewhere
it's a
around
pretty
there.
large number.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
The only thing that I saw in that article that was posted for about this particular topic is that already they are suggesting that that maybe the government should state government of Pennsylvania should maybe even try to remove some of these 4-year degree requirements that private companies do also have. And I would have a real problem with that, because I'm sure the private sector could figure out things a lot better than the government can. I am positive about that. But this program that Josh Shipper put in place, I don't know what his motives are, but I think it's a good thing, because I think it's really truly it's a skill set of the applicant that's more important than a 4-year degree from Podunk University. But the what I fear is that they will try to extend this into the private sector, which, I mean, if private companies want to do this, that's up to them, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't want the government mandating that.
Well, it's funny. Ultimately, this seems like another one of those cases where the left-handed government doesn't know what the right-handed government is doing. And in this case, if you want to stop the credentialing, just stop all the government dollars flowing into higher education, right? I mean, if we do that, then you'll have less people just heading that way, and the price signals will speak for themselves.
And Jason, that makes far too much sense for the
government. Exactly. Let's just keep funding degrees that we're telling you are not necessary. Just absolutely nuts.
Well, yeah, it's not all that dissimilar from smoking or drinking. Like, both legal products, the government tells you shouldn't do them, they're bad for you, but we're going to tax the hell out of you when you do it. And then we're going to use that money to do all these other things. It's like, well, you either want people to quit or you want to fund these programs, because you really can't do both.
Yeah.
But on the other side, on the other side of the coin, on this very issue, is that many here in California also, we have a similar problem where there are many jobs that probably do not require that should not require a 4-year degree, but they do. And I think someone did a study some time ago, and they had shown that about 20 to 25% of the jobs, of the people who are working in those jobs that require 4-year degrees, those people don't have 4-year degrees, but they're lying on their applications, saying that they do. And to be honest, many times the state of California don't even ask them to present degrees to show that they actually do have a degree. I was never even asked. I claimed to have 2 degrees when I went to work for the state of California, and no one ever asked me to this day. Well, I'm retired now. No one ever asked me to prove that I actually had the degrees that I claimed.
Well, there have been some scandals in government, and I've kind of been close to some of those, seeing some of them where a person will get discovered where they claim they have a degree and it turned out they didn't, within government. However, the funny thing is they weren't found out because the work wasn't getting done. They were simply found out because somebody on whatever the other side of the issue was did some digging and said, hey, this guy doesn't have the credential he says he has. So It's like Credential didn't really even affect the work anyway. It's not like they were found out
everything in
because they
government.
did a good job.
Eventually, it's going to be used as a weapon against your political adversary. So like I said, like I don't think Josh Shapiro is really a great person, honestly, or a great politician. But this is something that I kind of agree with, that the government shouldn't be mandating what you need to. If you can do the job, the government shouldn't say you need to go to XYZ university and get a 4-year degree in lesbian dance studies to hold a job as an accountant. You can crunch the numbers, you should be able to get the job.
Even some of the airlines are dropping the requirement for a 4-year degree from their pilot hiring. And part of that is because of the pilot shortage we see today. But, another part of it is that, a lot of the degrees have absolutely nothing to do with flying. And even a degree that I have a degree in professional aeronautics, and it was fun to do the degree. And I did it at the time thinking I'd maybe be in a position to be hired at an airline, and I needed a 4-year degree at the time to even be looked at, surprisingly enough. So I did that, but a lot of them don't have anything to do with it, and it has nothing to do whatsoever with the performance of the job.
Well, Tim, there was another example on the pilot side. I was going to jump onto the next issue, but since you brought up pilots and stuff, there was recently a story about how many hours were required for pilots, and they popped that number up like about 10 years ago, right? To add like an extra 1,000 hours of airtime or something that a person had to have. And they said there's no evidence that it made any difference whatsoever. It was just that there had been a crash. And so, well, what did the government do? Let's just add another 1,000 hours of time. And therefore that cut down the pool of pilots who are able to qualify, and then suddenly there's a shortage of pilots. So,
not too suddenly. It's a multifaceted reasoning behind why there's a pilot shortage today. But you're right. That the reason for that crash was fatigue, because of the low pay that the regional airlines at the time were offering to these pilots, and they to make up for the. I mean, we're talking 20, in some cases 15, 20,000 a year to fly a plane full of people at the regional airline level. And so that was the reasoning behind why these two pilots that were involved in this crash, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's very famous. And they were just tired from trying to live this lifestyle of being a pilot. And when I say lifestyle, I'm not talking about driving a Ferrari. I'm talking about a lifestyle where you're literally sleeping in a crew lounge and all kinds of other things, sleeping in your car and stuff like that, because you can't afford anything else, and eating top ramen. Stuff like that. That's the lifestyle I'm referring to.
But the crazy thing was, Tim, here comes the government with the wrong solution.
Yeah. Always.
Is that surprising?
A fire hose full of gasoline,
Top down, one size fit all.
Yeah,
is always the solution the government comes up with, and we always end up with these ridiculous answers. So something happened, or the government have to do something, and the something is always wrong. And this is a real problem.
The government is exceptional at hitting the bullseye on the absolute wrong target.
Yeah, really. And they hit it on this one. And the bullseye was contributory to the pilot shortage today, because they upped the requirements so ridiculously. I mean, in some cases, it involved a written test for the ATP. Also, you used to be able to just take it. And now, you take it and pass it. If you pass it, you pass it. Nowadays, you have to have all kinds of requirements. It's ludicrous with a capital L, not a small L, like libertarians.
But just in general, though, I mean, we are talking about the pilot requirements here, but in general, the government have so many permits and licenses that are required. I mean, it's downright ridiculous. I mean, like hairstyling in some states. I think even here in California, they may even have licensing requirements for hairstyling, for you to go to someone to braid your hair or some kind of nonsense like that.
In Pennsylvania,
I mean, it's ridiculous.
In Pennsylvania here, it takes fewer hours to become an EMT than it does to become a barber.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
there you
can
go.
give somebody a bad
There you go.
haircut, and
There
but
you go.
you need something like 27, 29 hours of certified training.
Yeah.
But to be an EMT, it's like a 4-hour afternoon class.
Yeah,
Well,
see?
you know what was so funny about all that too is that they say that these are necessary things that they're adding in, and then when the lockdown happens, governors like Whitmer and others were telling people, "Well, just cut your own hair." You know what?
Yeah.
I guess we didn't need that license then, right? Because we didn't need all that training. Oh, but let me jump on to the next topic so we don't get too far behind here. So in Pennsylvania, one of the other oddities that happened, they had a fairly contentious, I guess, state house battle recently,
Yes,
and
they did.
it was really close between Democrats and Republicans going into the election, and I guess the Democrats had sort of edged out the Republican, and maybe we could get the graphic on this, James. And so what happened was through a series of oddities and some people being promoted and leaving open positions and other things, an independent wound up getting the speakership position, which is kind of weird. It was actually a Democrat who switched to independent, and I guess got enough Republican votes to do it. But so it's not maybe necessarily a true independent, but hey, I mean, it's something that's different than the red blue dichotomy. So, Tim, is this a win in Pennsylvania?
It's more of a noble tie, I think, than an actual win. Yeah, he was a Democrat and he was appointed by Democrats, but he did have some Republican, some bipartisan support. So that's kind of like a tie. But at the end of the day, like he caucused with the Democrats. He basically was a Democrat. So it's not really a win for liberty or for independent voters as I see it. It's more of a tie in that it makes the word independent less scary to a lot of people. And that's maybe the first step to make it libertarian not scary to those people. So it's not a horrible thing by any stretch. I mean, it's definitely not a loss, I will say,
Yes.
but it's probably not quite a full win.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand why he made the switch after he was elected speaker. I didn't quite understand that, and I don't think the article was very clear about why he did it. I
So
mean, but
as I understand it, being kind of on the ground here and just about 20 minutes south of the cesspool that is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, it was basically so that some Republicans would vote for him, so that he could get the position. So it was basically just strategy. So that's why I don't really see it as a win so much as like, it's not a loss.
okay, that makes sense. Actually, that makes sense. Yes, yes.
Well, that certainly is something that I think at least we can feel a little bit good about anyway, seeing that something is breaking through the red-blue dichotomy.
Baby
But
steps, man. All baby steps.
Baby steps. Yes, yes.
Well, I tell you, as far as for the, if you guys don't have any more on that, and I guess we'll jump to another interesting thing that's happening in Pennsylvania, and that's that we see this issue with sort of some of these kind of woke DAs in a lot of places where they are, doing a lot of things that maybe seem to be letting crime go out of control, and I'm not sure if that's really the case of what's happening here. We'll have to dig into the story just a little bit, but at least we've seen all these issues like with I can't remember that guy in New York, the bodega worker, who was literally
Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg is the district
he's
attorney.
the DA, yeah, and he
Yes,
threw in the guy who was the bodega worker who was defending himself, and he's the
yes.
one who went to jail in the end, even though there was clear video evidence that showed that he wasn't doing anything other than defending himself. And we've seen kind of all these upside down things in California. We have these, essentially changes in the law where you could just walk through a Walgreens with a bag of stuff, and as long as you don't hit $1,000, you can, they're not going to try and prosecute you or anything. So anyways, apparently crime has gone up in Philadelphia, and they have a DA there who I guess he has policies where he's at least given lip service to no bail and no cash bail, I guess, and stuff like that. And so I guess the Republicans are trying to I guess it's not recall him, but it's impeach him. And
Impeach,
so
impeach.
yeah, and so they have done the legwork to do that, but in the end, it's been, I guess, put on hold. And so the question is, though, that this guy was reelected, so it wasn't just like he got in once and it was big surprise, and but it sounds like he was actually reelected. So is this really the way to go? If we're to sit here and have one party go after the other guy's guy because he's doesn't I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Is this whole impeachment thing that we seem to be getting into, is that what we should be doing at the state level when it sounds like somebody may be doing a really questionable job?
I'd say in this case, it's kind of 6 of one or half dozen of the other. As long as the Democrats and Republicans are actually fighting each other, that kind of presents an opportunity for libertarians like myself, third parties, independents, to kind of squeak in and talk to the people who are tired of the fighting, tired of the infighting, and say, hey, there's another way. Hey, come on over. We have cookies. Whatever it takes to get people to open their eyes. Hey, cut school with me and let's go learn about liberty. So I think it would be a good way, or it's a good thing that they're fighting each other and not fighting us. But on the other hand of that, it really sort of lends credence to the people who have entirely checked out, and they say, politics doesn't care about me. I'm not going to care about politics, because they see when Team Red's in power, Team Blue's going to impeach. When Team Blue's in power, Team Red's going to impeach. And it's more, as my dad used to say, SSDD. It just wash, rinse, repeat. Except, when it comes to Harrisburg, or in this case, Philadelphia, there's not a whole lot of washing, just a lot of repeating.
Yeah.
I have some real mixed feelings about these things, whether we're talking about Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, George Gaston here in Los Angeles, Kim Fox in Chicago, or Kim Gardner in St. Louis. All of these so-called woke prosecutors, I mean, they're all elected. This is the thing. They're all elected. I mean, I believe in the power of the vote. I believe we should have voter integrity and all that. But the power of the vote is the power of the vote. I mean, if we're electing these people, then we're going to get what we voted for. The problem is that these woke DAs like Alvin Bragg and others, and Jason, you're just speaking about the bodega worker who was, he ended up in prison, but the charges were eventually dismissed. But these woke DAs who were funded by George Soros for the most part are taking criminals and dismissing charges or lessening the charge and releasing these people back into the communities, and they are sworn to protect these communities from these dangerous people, and they are letting these people back into these communities to commit more crimes. This is a real problem. But you're always stuck with the fact that they are elected, and they're elected by the people, and these same people are now seeing the results, seeing the effects of their vote, which is these criminals roaming among them and committing more crimes. So you don't know how to feel about this, right? You really don't know how to feel about this, given the fact that these people are elected. It's a real problem and a real quandary.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was in that, and I just found the guy's name. It was Jose Alba was the guy who was
Jose
the
Alba,
bodega
yes,
worker.
that's right, yes.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, he was defending himself from an assault, while he was just doing his job, and the woman who was the girlfriend of the guy who was doing the assault was actually stabbing Jose Alba at the time, and she didn't even go to jail, but he went to jail, and just a case of being the wrong color in New York, I guess, as far as the law goes. But it just, if it wasn't for the video evidence, that Jose Alba would probably still be in jail. It was a public outcry from that video evidence that actually got him out. So anyways, yeah, it's just kind of nuts in some of these cases. But
well, let's be honest, when I vote for district attorney, I see somebody on the ballot, I mean, if I do vote at all, I don't know who they are from Adam. I don't do any research on it.
Yeah.
So if a George Soros gets somebody on the ballot and somehow gets them elected, partly it's because people just don't pay attention to those kind of lower offices. correct?
Tim, and that's a very valid point. That's a valid point. But in some of these cases, though, we have cases where people have been in office for about 4 years and they are being re-elected after they have done their dirty work. It's really, and you're right. I mean, many times for the law,
but for the same reason, people don't pay attention to what they're doing, even after they've been in office for a while. They don't do the research, right?
Kind of. I will take the liberty of saying knuckleheads like myself, who are willing to step out there locally and, kind of be that voice of reason, be that libertarian voice, the small L libertarian voice to try and get people to wake up locally. Because I think if you can make some changes locally, if you can impact some people locally, like you're going to really make some serious changes globally, but everything starts locally. And Leon, I agree with you completely. Like, I don't know how to feel about it as well, because putting criminals back on the street is never a good thing.
Right.
But at the same time, it's why I oppose mandated term limits, because we have term limits. They're called elections, but people don't exercise them. So it's not a good situation for any of us to be in.
Yeah. One thing that does worry me a little bit about this old spate of impeachments and this exercise of power is that if a libertarian ever wins one of these, it could be either red or blue that might go after him to impeach him. Right?
It would probably be both. That would be the one thing that they do bipartisan.
Yeah, probably so. Well, it's always a risk. Okay, there's always a risk that you're right, Jason. That risk is always there, ever present. But when you want to play that game, politics is a contact sport. Hey, that might be the outcome. It might be a sad outcome, but it might be an outcome.
Well, it's funny. On a recent show, we interviewed a guy who actually was elected to essentially the DA position in his county, and that was Thomas Lane in, I believe it was Iowa, and so it was mostly a red state there. So it was kind of the Republicans he was a little more concerned about in that state. But anyways, this has got me good and triggered, Tim. So you want to get into good guys with guns?
All right. Yes, I would. This is a good example on a lot of levels. The criminals or perpetrators in this situation did an excellent job of putting themselves in a position to deserve to be to have deadly force utilized against their actions.
And the victim, James, can we get the visual up on this one too? Thanks.
The victim did an excellent job of defending himself and putting himself in a position legally and morally and every other way to be justified in using deadly force. The police department did a good job in getting evidence and not jumping to conclusions, and the DA did a good job of not prosecuting the person that was doing the defending and prosecuting the other guys that survived. 2 of them died. 1 of them got shot. And I think there's a 4th one. But anyway, this happened in Bucks County back in late October of last year. So recently, the 21-year-old man who shot and killed 2 men who were attacking him in the parking lot of the Steam Pub in Upper Southampton Township was justified in using deadly force. District Attorney Matt Weintraub announced on Thursday, October 27th of last year. Liam Hughes, and this is the guy that did this is a victim, and a friend were returning to Hughes' car on the night of October 7th after leaving the Steam Pub in Southampton, Pennsylvania. When a group of men gathered near his car, confronted and attacked him, Weintraub, the district attorney, explained. Pardon me. 3 men pummeled Hughes during the attack, punching and striking him in the face and the head, knocking him to the ground, where they continued the assault. Hughes attempted to get into his vehicle, but was being actively pulled out by one of the attackers. Hughes had to reach behind with his right arm while being attacked and was able to get his hand on his weapon that was between the driver's seat and center console. By the way, lesson here, try to wear your weapon on your person next time. He warned the assailants that he had a weapon and told them to stop. By the way, it's a good thing he was able to get to it. The men continued the attack, and Hughes opened fire, killing 2 of his assailants and injuring a 3rd man. Immediately after the shooting, Hughes called 911, telling dispatchers he shot at a group of men who attacked him in the parking lot of the Steam pub. Bucks County 911 received numerous other calls reporting the shooting. Upper
Tim,
Southampton
to cut
town.
to the chase, it sounds like,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
was a good shoot, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was. Anyway, the guy received all kinds of injuries to his person, Hughes, the victim, and he remained on the scene and cooperated with police. I don't know if that's a good idea, but anyway, he did, and it worked out well for him. It doesn't always do that, and had lots of medical records he provided and everything that showed he sustained a lot of injuries. Everybody reviewed it at the district attorney's office, and they came up that yes, it was a justifiable shooting of a smaller guy against 3 larger assailants, and so all is well that ends well, except for the loss of 2 of Pennsylvania's finest, those 2 perpetrators.
Well, it sounds like the bottom
for a
line.
good guy with a gun. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Well, it just sounds like the bottom line is this is another story of somebody who was, would have been a victim had it not been for their Second Amendment rights. And,
Correct.
those are stories we like to tell on this show, just to let people know that, hey, this is the Second Amendment actually has some value and does some good to defend people's liberty, and defending your right not to be assaulted by somebody in a parking lot is one of those rights.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I hear that article, and right away, being a Pennsylvania resident, the biggest things that I think of is, I'm running through the check boxes of the things that he had to do not to be arrested. He had to try and flee, check, tried to get into his car, had to announce that he had a gun with intent to use it, check, fired, which obviously, then he called the police himself, check. These are things that, like, in Pennsylvania, like those 3 things, like you have to do, or else you're going to be arrested yourself. So while it's great that his firearm saved his life, then honestly, by taking these 2 scumbags out of the gene pool, probably saved a lot of other lives. It's kind of just a shame that he had to go through basically getting his ass beat, and then go through the wherewithal mentally to say, okay, I have to try and flee. I have to announce that I have a weapon, that I'm intending to use it. And then afterwards, I have to remain calm and hear long enough to call the police myself so that they can come. And I'm sure they took the weapon. They probably still have it and have no intent on giving it back. Because that's kind of how police in Pennsylvania roll. So while I am happy and thankful that, it was a good guy with a gun who stopped a group of bad guys without one. It's just a shame that, it didn't end sooner with they came up and assaulted him. He put them down. That should have been the story.
Indeed.
Yeah, I agree. And it is unfortunate that those kinds of check boxes have
There's
to be.
a lesson to the kids out there: always conceal carry.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So, and it's also a lesson that regardless how good a good shoot goes, if you have to kill somebody with your firearm, it's not going to be your best day of your life. It's going to be the worst on many levels, and one of which is the trying to avoid being prosecuted like Alba in that case.
Yes.
And he may still face civil prosecution. It's entirely possible that the parents of the deceased will try to file suit as well. And sure. I've actually seen it before here in Pennsylvania and other states as well, where it's a good shoot and everybody admits it's a good shoot, but the survivors will still file a civil complaint, a civil lawsuit for millions and millions of dollars to try and destroy this person, because they said, well, he shot my baby and my baby was unarmed and he was a good kid when he was 12. It's like, I'm sure he was a good kid when he was 12. At 30, he's trying to kill people on the street.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. With his fists, and that accounts for more murders by fists than by all rifles combined in the United
exactly.
States every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to be all butthurt about the AR-15, why don't you take a look at the number of people that are killed by fists and feet? Because
Tim, are you
it's
advocating for forced
exceeding.
amputations now?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Government mandated
Exactly.
amputations. You all heard it here first.
If they were being consistent, that's what they would advocate
Yeah.
for. If they were being consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Banning the
but,
assault fist.
Banning the assault fist. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a fist, and this is an assault fist. Yeah, it's got the wash. It's evil
I'd be
black.
happy if they abandoned the assault spoon because I could stand to lose a few pounds.
There you go. Yeah, the assault spoon's probably done more damage to the country. But anyway, speaking of absolute nonsense, that brings us to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol, and we're going to talk about I guess the most recent senatorial victor in Pennsylvania, and that's John Fetterman. And can we bring up the visual on this? Maybe we can get the visual. So recently, just for those of you who don't know the background story, he was running for Senate in Pennsylvania as a Democrat, and he wound up having a stroke while on the campaign trail. And he came back, and they kind of shielded him, tried to, keep him away from the media. But it became pretty clear as he started speaking at events that he, was suffering some cognitive issues from this stroke, where it was impeding his speech at the very least. And but anyways, they tried to say, hey, look, he's fine, even though people could sort of tell he was saying a bunch of crazy things. And then they just readmitted him to the hospital about a week ago. And I guess they cleared him to come back out. But this may be kind of a constant touch and go, I guess, with Fetterman while he's the new Senate. I mean, he's just barely started in the Senate. So he's, we got 6 more years, I guess, of this. But some of the gaffes he said, and I think this one kind of is funny because it goes with what happened at the Super Bowl. This is this about says it all for the Eagles yesterday, and maybe we could get the clip on this. This is something he said on the campaign trail. James, can we get that?
The Eagles are so much better than the Eagles.
Yeah, that's kind of how the Super Bowl went for the Eagles. So,
my state of Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen, we're sorry.
We got 6 more years of this.
I don't think we have 6 more years of this. I don't know. You guys are from California, so obviously you know Sonny Bono and that whole situation. I think that's what we're looking at here. This is a Sonny Bono situation. I think within the next 6 months, we're going to have Senator Gazelle, or whatever his wife of his is named, and we're going to have to deal with her.
Hey, it's funny.
That's my prediction. So you heard it here first.
I think I agree with you. I think this was the plan all along. Since he got that stroke, and he was obviously have some real cognitive problems.
He suffered the stroke allegedly on primary day.
Yes.
But nobody saw him for like 2 weeks prior to the primary. So there's I don't want to get too Alex Jonesy here, but sometimes the tinfoil hat fits. And the whole way through it, he was campaigning, like a Biden. Like he didn't leave the basement, and when he did, you got the one and only televised debate that he did with who was no treat himself, Mehmet Oz, and the first words out of Fetterman's mouth are, "Hello, good night, everyone."
So it looks like Tim's lagging there, but he said, "Hello, good night, everyone."
Like,
so that was literally how he came out of the gate.
And then he had when they asked him,
Fetterman.
Yeah, you just started having a Fetterman or a Biden, some combination of the two happened to your computer.
So much better than Eagles. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I wish him well. Like there are members of my wife's family who literally have suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia. So I recognize a lot of these symptoms. So it's frightening to me that the voters in Pennsylvania could be so blinded by their partisan nonsense, that rather than take a swing on, what I considered a pretty good libertarian, and Eric Gerhardt, who was running for Senate as a libertarian in the same election, they said that our options are Senator doctor from New Jersey who just moved here, kind of Hillary Clinton style, to run for Senate, or a guy who literally just demonstrated that cognitively he does not have the prowess to perform the duties of the job. And faced with those options, they chose the absolute worst one. And that's my state. Yeah. That's why I am hyper focused on local, because clearly you're not breaking through Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and the voting block monopolies that they have at the moment. But we're working on it.
But Tim, Pennsylvania really is showing something quite odd, because in the 2020 presidential election, we had Joe Biden with serious cognitive decline, didn't campaign very much. He didn't even campaign very much in Pennsylvania. I think he only had one rally or two or some kind of stuff and things like that. And then he beat an incumbent president in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And then Fetterman come around 2 years later, do essentially the same thing after showing even more serious cognitive decline. And he also won. I mean,
so I guess our next step is literally to elect a head of cabbage.
Yeah.
It seems like that's the trajectory Pennsylvania's on. And I just I'm too tied to this state to move anywhere else. So I'm here for the long haul. So whatever happens, I'm in it. So
Well, what was funny too, when Biden was campaigning for Fetterman, he accidentally referred to Fetterman's wife as the next senatorial candidate.
Yeah. Biden referred to Kamala Harris as the president. Yes. Yeah. Clearly, these two are not the elevator doesn't go to the penthouse with either of these two. And I feel bad for him. I recognize the symptoms of a stroke, and how difficult it is to recover from that if you ever do. Most people don't fully recover from a stroke of that nature. The cognitive decline that Biden has, that's definitely, that's Alzheimer's. We went through that with my mother-in-law. We went through that with my father-in-law. I recognize the signs. Just from the State of the Union address, you could see the signs. The frequent tonal outbursts where you're just screaming something for no reason. That's one of them, where you get lost and you start slurring your words and you put words together like that. That's one of those things. And you could load him up with caffeine or cocaine or whatever they shot him up with for the first 45 minutes of that speech. But after that, the mask is essentially off. And what you see is what you get. And it's my personal opinion. We're going to have a Senator Gazelle within 6 months, and probably a 25th Amendment exercise, and President Kamala Harris in 2 months.
Yeah. He's surprising.
So everybody, red letter date today.
Yeah.
13th, my wedding anniversary, the day before Valentine's Day, the day after my beloved Philadelphia Eagles got screwed by the referees. That's when I'm making these predictions. So when it comes to pass,
you heard it here first.
That's right.
When it all comes to pass, you guys can have me back on the show, and I'll give you winning lottery numbers next.
That actually brings up, you're running for supervisor. So, as that election heats up, feel free to contact us, and we'd love to get you back. And maybe we could bring up your webpage here too, so that people can see where they can go to check you out. You also have it's timforpa.com. There's also, you have a Facebook page, and you have a Twitter page. We don't have that one up, but
Twitter is just that Tim4PA.
Okay.
I like to keep things nice and simple. And there's not a whole lot on the website. It's actually repurposed from the Lieutenant Governor run website. I raise goats and I talk about liberty. I don't design websites. So it's really pretty basic.
Well, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we have interviewed Tim McMaster here on a show that's just focused on him. So you can go check that out if you want to learn a little more as well. And you also brought up Eric Gerhardt, and we interviewed him too. So if you're listening, you can go check that interview out as well. That was kind of a fun interview as well. So, but thanks all for joining us. Thank you, Tim, for being here as well today.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Indeed. Yes.
I will be back.
Until the next one, everyone, stay free.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.